Call the meeting to order. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So welcome to the February 25th meeting of the Rhinebeck Village Board. The primary reason for our meeting tonight is two public hearings, the first on the Fairgrounds zoning district and the second on the events code. So we need a motion to open the, or is it it's still open? Was it continued?
Well, you're opening public hearing on the Fairgrounds district to start with.
Okay.
So moved. Did we want Neil to present kind of the overview first?
Do we need a motion, Rich, to open it, or was it?
Just
it was
move to open the public hearing. You can have a presentation at that point.
Okay. So Heinz gave us a motion. Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Go ahead, Neil.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Fred's getting it.
Neil Wilson, President of LRC Planning Services. Thank you very much. It's been a number of months since I've been before the board talking about this particular project. Just by way of background, I was retained a couple of years ago by the Fairgrounds to assist in the preparation of the legislation, which is the subject of the public hearing tonight. The purpose of the legislation is to create a zone within which the uses that make up the fairgrounds and the purposes for which the fairground exists could be made lawful and would allow the fairgrounds over time, subject to appropriate planning board and perhaps zoning board approvals, be allowed to make improvements and changes to the property. One of the very first things that we did as part of the process toward creating what's termed as the Fairgrounds District was the preparation of an as-built map, which is the map that's over here to my right. It's referred to as an as-built because it reflects the things that were built already exist on the ground as they were built, as built. So what you're really looking at is a map of all of the improvements actually within both the village as well as the town portion of the fairgrounds. And the intention here is to establish sort of a baseline, if you will, for what's on the ground as of the date of adoption of the legislation, which would include the map and then the creation of the Fairgrounds District and then incorporate that into the village's zoning law. So what we have done here is to identify not only the existing improvements, but the district map also includes certain buffer zones, which are the hatched areas toward the south end of the property, within which development is otherwise either prohibited or severely curtailed. The idea being that we've established buffer zones from the residences that are located immediately to the south. The legislation itself also recognizes the existing uses at the fairgrounds and lists as permitted uses those uses which, again, historically the fairgrounds operates as, but also allows for certain other accessory uses, storage buildings and things like that, that sort of go along with the fairgrounds operations. So we've spent the last couple of years working with a committee of the village board toward this particular draft. We think it's a pretty good piece of legislation. We want to thank the village board and the committee for working with us on it. There was a lot of time and effort put into it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Anybody else like to comment?
This is public
Yes,
comment.
it's the public hearing for the fairgrounds.
I just have a question. Maybe you already addressed it. I don't know. I got late here late, so I'm sorry.
Well, we just started.
Oh, okay. If this is going in to be like as part of the zoning law, then if you could just like clarify, I mean, right now, a lot of no matter what district you are in, correct me if I'm wrong, like if you have to come in for a special permit or something that is, I mean, or I don't know, site plans are not uncommon, I guess, for someone to come in for a site plan approval, whether you need a building permit or a zoning permit, or whatever. And I just want to like clarify under C, where it says like permitted principal uses, concerts, what have you. Is this kind of like will all of these uses be kind of grandfathered in a sense, that they have the ability to do this, or is it if they have, or will they still need to come in for, like, say, like a site plan approval for a specific, like, say, like a new concert that they're not already doing?
Those uses are considered permitted, and if there's a new structure involved, even permitted structures are going to require site plan review, which is unusual in the zoning code, that all permitted uses, even that improvements that are proposed, will have to go through site plan review.
So
But not for things that don't involve any new
structures? Okay. So
That's my understanding.
So it won't like, so it won't apply, I mean, the fairgrounds will be in its own district that, will it not, I guess like special, I mean, what would be like a special permit or something like that in this, or does it not apply?
These things in under C are permitted uses.
Okay, I guess my question is, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something because I'm tired or something. Is there any, I mean,
The
for
idea is
instance,
to-
if someone, I mean, would they ever have to come in for, like, just for instance, like a concert? I mean, there could be a big difference between, say, the 4th of July concert they did, a few years ago, and I don't know, like something that would be over like Woodstock. And I'm not saying that wouldn't be great for town. I'm just wondering if that would be considered some sort of special permit, or whether that is also a permitted use because it's a concert.
That would be a permitted use, but it would trigger an events permit application.
Okay.
From the events code.
Um,
But if a new concert venue and improvements were proposed, then that would require site plan review,
okay, so it's
like a
really,
new grandstand or something like that.
so there's no, okay, so it would still be, so uses would still be applicable just the same as new structures, or, I mean, it would be this district would be have the same regulations as the village district or the highway district or relay or what have you, under the zoning law.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand yeah.
Okay,
But the idea was to bring in the compliance, pretty much the things that they're doing now, and the things that are connected to their mission, et cetera.
no, and I think it's great. I think this is really, was well done, and, whoever worked to put it together, I think it's great. I think, the fairgrounds is definitely not, a typical, it's not the Taste of Rhinebeck, or something like that. So I think it's great that it was separated. I just know that once the law goes into place, that it's going to be there for, past this board, past other boards. And I just want everything to be very concrete, clear, so that in, the next generation, there aren't any issues. There aren't any, like, that everything's black and white. That was my only comment. I mean, I recently asked someone to look up for, like, alternate to salt, and they told me soot could be used, or sidewalk. I just want to make sure that, everything is going to be black and white. And it looks like you guys have done a great job, so thank you.
Thanks, Piper.
Thanks.
Anybody else like to make a comment? Mr. Reardon?
Mr. Mayor, trustees.
Mr. Reardon?
Mr. Mayor?
I said to Dick before that those chairs are up there are really a lot more comfortable than those, but only in a certain regard. Piper, maybe I can help explain this a little bit. You know, of course, I think everybody here knows I was involved in the development of this whole thing. Worked with Dick Weckeser, Bucky Kuhn, Andy, Neil, Lou Ruge, Brandt, Francois Weigel, Bob Fennell when he was the zoning enforcement officer. And we worked as a group for 2 years, basically, to develop this document that you have in front of you tonight. And our objective here was the Fairgrounds was a non-conforming use in a residential zone. So basically, the Fairgrounds couldn't do anything. They couldn't put a shovel in the ground. And it's unrealistic to expect the Fairgrounds to be able to grow and be successful as a non-conforming use. So my whole thought process in the development of this was to bring it to the point where it would be a permitted use. So the zoning document is going to allow for the uses. So it will allow them to have agricultural exhibits. It will allow them to have concerts, religious activities, whatever those named things are there. But once you do that, you have to then have some control over the impact that those things will have on the community. That was the need for the events code. But the events code was not developed just because of the Fairgrounds. The events code was developed for any event coming to the community, so that the village had enough time to look at something and say, all right, what other when you sit in that chair, you think worst case scenarios all the time. You say, what do I do to prevent something from happening? And if it does happen, how do I react to that? So the events code gives the village board the opportunity to look at an event that's coming to anywhere in the village, Fairgrounds or anywhere else, and say, okay, is the parking adequate? Is the sanitation adequate? What are we going to do in the event of? So the two dovetail together, and that's our objective has been for the last 2 years, to make sure that they both came to the table at the same time, because you can't permit the uses if you don't have any oversight over them. And there's no point in having an events code to regulate uses if it's not zoned properly. So hopefully that kind of clarifies your question. What I will say is we worked very hard on this for 2 years. I think that both groups for the zoning and the events code, I know they spent an inordinate amount of time doing this, did a fantastic job, and I think this is something that the Fairgrounds can live with, and I think they concur. I think it's something that the village board and the village residents can live with. And you made the comment, Piper, that this will be there for years and years. What we need to keep in mind is we're amending a code now. If we find that there's something else that needs to be done, the code can be amended again, but we worked very hard to try and come up with something that we hope doesn't have to be amended. But you can always amend a code. So I would say to the board, and I know these guys, we've been through multiple discussions on this, the time is now to act on this. The time is now to have this put into place, and I would urge them to move forward with this, put it to bed, and I know they got a lot of other issues they have to deal with, so I'm sure they want to get it over with too. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else? Make a motion to close it?
We do have a letter from Steve Rosenberg. I mean, I could read this and.
Okay.
Please accept the following comments on the proposed fairground zoning district. 1, noise. Per section 1C, it appears that the primary permitted activities themselves are not subject to noise impact limitations. Only concerts and entertainment activities in conjunction with otherwise permitted activities. I urge the board to require all permitted events and activities themselves be held to the same requirements. I also would suggest that the phrase, to the extent, maximum extent reasonably practicable, be inserted in the second sentence of IC4 after the word designed. I just wanted to point out that my belief is that actually, I shouldn't comment on his letter. I mean, I don't think that's really appropriate, but. Okay, 2, screening of accessory uses. Sections 1D2 and 1.1 regarding outdoor storage should be cross-referenced and clarified so that anything permitted to be stored outside is required to be subject to the screening requirements. 3, setbacks. Section 1G, C, and D, setbacks of only 25 feet are inadequate to protect the privacy and property rights of abutters, given the nature of some activities at the fairgrounds. The 75 feet setback for residential districts along Route 9 is better, but it should be at least 75 feet, no matter where there is a residential area, not only along Route 9. And in all instances, it should also include explicit screening and visual impact mitigation requirements. Further, the planning board should have the right to increase the size of the setback to something greater than 75 feet, depending on the nature of the activity or use proposed for that area. Impervious surfaces. The 40% impervious coverage limit is too high, could have negative environmental impacts on surrounding areas, and could negatively impact the character of the village. I don't know how much of the property is covered with impervious now, but I would suggest anything greater than 20% should be subject to special permit requirements, and in no event should it exceed 30%. 5, outdoor lighting. The ordinance does not appear to include any regulation of outdoor lighting. This is critically important to protect the character of the village and the privacy and peaceful enjoyment of nearby residential neighborhoods. If this is intended to be part of site plan review, then that should be explicit. And it is, by the way. 6, signs. The ordinance does not appear to include any regulation of the design of, or lighting of, or materials used for signs. If they are intended to be part of site plan review, then they should be explicit. Oh, energy efficiency. As mentioned in previous comments, leading edge energy efficiency and green building requirements should be included for all new structures greater than a given size. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. Please let me know if you have any questions. Sincerely, Steve Rosenberg.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Steve. No other comments? Motion to close it?
So moved.
You gotta make a motion.
Second?
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved.
It depends on what the board wants to do. I have prepared a resolution for adoption, if that's what the board intends to do. It goes about the fact that you've had the environmental assessment form, that's been reviewed. There are no environmental impacts that have been identified by the board. The matter was referred to county planning, and we have a determination of local concern. So if the board decided it wants to act tonight, it can do so.
Okay.
I'd like to do the public hearing for the events code next, and then vote after we go through that too. If that's what you guys prefer.
So do we want to make the motion to open it?
I make a motion that we vote on the two together after we hear both public hearings.
No, I meant a motion to open the public hearing on the events code.
Oh, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing on the events code. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Brent, do you want to
Yeah,
give an
just
introduction to the
briefly,
events code?
We've talked about the events code before at workshops. It's a brief document that was produced by the steering committee, which did an excellent job preparing a sample code. We did do some basic revisions. We've changed the word to event to mean an arranged, non-routine activity within the village that brings together an assemblage or gathering of a group of 250 or more people. The definition of event before didn't have a person limitation, and there was some concern that pancake breakfast and knitting circles could be considered an event.
Pat's Knitting Club.
I like the code because it's focused. The inquiry of the village board is limited, and it's based upon impacts, as Jim has pointed out already. And I want to point out paragraph 121-3C. In making its determination, the Board of Trustees, that's us, will consider among other criteria: 1, the sponsor's successful experience in holding a prior event; 2, the sponsor's capacity to adequately manage the event if it is seeking to hold; 3, the exceptional demands placed upon the village's infrastructure by the event and the village's ability to respond to an emergency or disaster; 4, the time of the year that the event will be held and whether more than one event is being applied for in the same time period; and 5, the additional planning, preparedness, and mitigation efforts required of the village's emergency response and public safety agencies. And that's where our interest as a village comes into play, and I think that's that's really good. It also acknowledges the expertise in the fairgrounds, the size of the parcel, the experts that are conducting the activities there, and it's mandatory that we consider those factors as well when we approve an event permit. So, to me, that sizes it up.
Thanks, Brant. Do we have any comments from the public?
I'm sorry, I'm disorganized as always. I'm really pleased with the new and improved events code. I appreciate the clarification or on the definition of the event by adding the 250 or more people. I think that amount is, fair. And I have just a couple of questions. And, maybe some of my questions will be further, not clarified, broadened, I guess, with once like an actual application is created. I assume there'll be something similar to what you have with like zoning, with like a checklist of things that people will be, bringing to the application as part of the
The
form or
steering committee actually
application.
supplied one for us. We didn't include that in the, it's not incorporated as part of this code, but my feeling is that we're going to use it, and it's really good. It's really brief and, gets right to the point.
Okay. Okay, so, on, I guess, what was it, 121-3 dash, 121-3 and number D. It says in the very bottom, the safety, health, and well-being of residents of the village. Is residents defined as property owners, or is it literally only residents, people who live here? And is there any way to incorporate, either change that to property owners or have that, I don't know, so that the commercial district is included in that sentence?
The residence isn't given a definition, so it's whatever the common meaning is.
What is the common meaning, I guess?
You could go to Webster's, or, to me, would you be considered a resident as a property
I mean, a
owner?
resident is typically someone who actually resides, who lives
Right.
in that area. So someone who is, could be someone who rents an apartment, which, wouldn't be a property owner, or someone who actually lives within the village. So that actually, and again, I didn't look it up in the Webster's, whatever, but just from my experience of what a resident mean, does not actually include,
Well, in
business
the-
owners or property owners.
In 121-1 purpose, it says that
Hold on a second, 121.
the first paragraph,
121-3.
no, dash one, the
One,
first
okay.
paragraph of the events code. It's the purpose of this ordinance to preserve the public peace and maintain good order within the village of Rhinebeck, thereby ensuring the safety, health, welfare, and well-being of persons or property. So it's your general zoning, public health, safety, and welfare language.
Okay, well, I'm just asking because this is under the permit process, so that's why I
Yeah,
was
I mean, I don't
asking
know.
for like clarification on that. In number 120, section 121-6 violations, the enforcement officer, is that the ZEO? Or can that be anything like the village board, the police, I don't know. Who is that intended to be defined as?
Rich, that's your language, right?
Well, we can simply insert zoning enforcement officer to make it clear if that's who you want to enforce the ordinance. Because I don't believe our code has a definition of enforcement officer.
We could leave it though, because it would be the ZEO, or it could be designated to be somebody else.
Or the code enforcement officer
Right.
at the building?
Yeah.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
It could be probably the building inspector as well, right? Because he
You can
handles
make, you can
any of
make
the-
that designation for
Yeah,
that.
he handles any of
I
the
think
code
it's
that's
okay the
zoned.
way it is, but.
I guess I'm only saying this because and again, I realize you guys are on the board, but for someone who's actually applying for this permit and is hosting an event, it says that, we have to, I get it, you're hosting an event, you need to show somebody whatever you mean. But I think it would be clearer if it was, I don't know, even a general definition, so that,
The application is
Could be
filed with
also the
Board
fire
of
chief.
Trustees.
Yeah, because we have a circulation
I know, but
within
it-
the departments.
but it says basically, I don't know, maybe I'm reading, failure to, okay, I forget.
I mean,
failure
what's
to
the harm?
permit
I
the-
mean, we're not going to
Failure
have
to
a Barney
present.
Fife or anything.
Say that again?
We won't have a Barney Fife. I mean,
I'm aware of that. I guess I was taking it as, says I guess I was taking it more literally that during the event, a CEO or someone could, show up on your doorstep, when, on a Saturday or something, and but if you're comfortable with that, then that's fine. I guess it would I was thinking it would be more clear to the actual person if they understood who this person was, or who.
I think it could be more than one person.
Yeah,
As
no,
the
it
code applies,
definitely could be. I'm not saying it has to be, whoever the new CEO is, but I guess just having that clarification of what an enforcement officer is would be helpful. Okay. During the permit process, will there be, will they have to either do public notice for a permit? Will the public be notified of the permit before the board? Or would the adjacent properties be notified?
we mentioned this before. If the board takes an action, what we talk about at the meetings are on the agenda, and there's a requirement that we get 180 days prior notice to a planned event. So any matter that we consider here as part of the board would be on our agenda.
It would be on the agenda, but it wouldn't be something similar to like a special permit where the zoning board
I don't
actually
believe
sends
so.
out?
I don't
Okay.
believe so.
What kinds of signs will you be permitting for events? Or is that something, I don't, is that already part of the zoning law? I mean, because
Yeah.
I know that banners and
Yeah.
things like that are not allowed in the village
Right.
zoning law. Can you tell, does anybody know what is allowed for temporary events in the zoning law? Because I know that banners are not allowed.
I didn't bring my code book with me tonight.
Okay, well, I can tell you that basically banners are not allowed, sandwich board signs are not allowed, so I'm now kind of asking you, so the use of one or more signs.
The intention isn't to leapfrog over that or, to ignore that stuff.
Okay, because that's basically what occurs. Anytime there's an event in town, Taste of Rhinebeck, anything, I mean, I'm saying Taste of Rhinebeck because it's, everybody knows it. But they're usually allowed to put banners up, this, that, the other thing. And it's kind of annoying, basically, for the people who actually are in the village 24/7, paying the tax roll, everything like that, and then someone comes in and puts up a giant banner. I'm just saying,
I think
it
those- I
might
mean,
be
those-
fair, for the people who are coming in, who are hosting events, to have the same the same laws like the rest of us. That's all I'm
I
saying.
think that's a good idea that we should probably discuss when an event comes up in front of the board.
Okay.
Maybe that can be a box on the application.
Maybe it is already, I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's see.
As part of the application process, are you going to, I assume you're obviously are going to be discussing parking, and you're going to be requiring the people hosting the event to have specific areas where, or instructing them that they can park in public parking lots compared to private. And then my other question, and then I assume also cleanup. I know Center Class does a great job with cleanup and things like that, but all of those things are things that sort of.
The highway department does a great job.
Jim and
cleaning
I
up.
did that.
And don't get me wrong, we do it too. I mean, but I know that that's addressed when they come before it. And then I just had a question about. guess that's it. I can't remember the other question. Thank you.
Thanks, Piper.
Thanks.
Any other comments on the events code?
Good evening. John Worth. I was, as you know, the chairman of the Events Code Steering Committee, and my comments this evening are addressed in that capacity. I think it would have been helpful on the village website if you had indicated the changes that you had made in the original draft that was proposed. I didn't realize that changes would be made or were made until very late in the game, and I went today and compared what we had originally proposed with what had been revised, and it's those revisions that I would like to talk about. The committee, when we addressed this situation, we looked at first, as I've said before, what the needs were for the village with regard to events, and secondly, how best to address those needs in as succinct and simple manner as we could that would be effective, and also giving the Board of Trustees broad discretion to insert things in there that they felt they needed if it wasn't already there, such as the number of people in an event that would require an application. And that was one of the changes. Some of the changes were substantive, or the revisions, and some of them were just semantics and really just another way of saying different things. The removal of the mass gathering definition, that was one change. The 250 or more people that this would apply to is another change. The revisions that I think are problematic are the violations, and that's what I would mainly like to address. When we drafted this proposed code or ordinance, we envisioned two violations. Number one, the failure to obtain the permit, and number two, the failure to comply with the conditions that might be imposed in the permit. And we felt that the ordinance that we proposed supported those kinds of violations. That's where I think some problems could arise with some of these additional violations, and I'll give you my thoughts on those and why I think they're problematic. First of all, violation B, failure to present a permit to an enforcement officer upon request of such officer. My comments, there's nothing in the local law that requires making the permit available for inspection, number one. Number two, the permit would likely be in possession of the sponsor, and this provision broadly refers to any person and is not specific. So, in my mind, if there's nothing in the ordinance that supports this kind of a violation, I think it's unenforceable. And also, it's not very specific as to who should be carrying the permit or how it should be exposed or what have you. The second violation, refusal to permit inspection by an enforcement officer to inspect the premises covered by the permit during the event. The problem I see here is there's no distinction between public and private property, and as you know, this ordinance applies to private right-of-ways and not to, to public right-of-ways and not to private property. I think this violation is vague in its terms, and secondly, the local law applies to public places, as I said, and not private places, and third, what would an enforcement officer be inspecting on private premises and under what authority? And fourth, one cannot violate something that is not provided for in the local law. D, the failure to comply with permit conditions or to undertake actions for the control of traffic, parking, noise, lighting, refuse, and the like. The problem I have with that is, number one, the sponsor has no authority to control traffic or parking, and nothing in the local law that imposes this requirement. Secondly, noise. This provision is in conflict with the ordinance that you already have as a village. And what does that ordinance do? That ordinance says in the restricted acts, non-commercial public speaking and public assembly activities, which is what the events would be, conducted on any public space or public right-of-way shall be exempt from the operation of this section. So you have something in there which is ill-defined and in conflict with your other zoning ordinance, with your other ordinance with respect to noise. And I would point out also, and I mentioned this in the report when we did the report on our work, that the noise ordinance is not very specific in terms of, in other words, it doesn't contain a lot of standards. It leaves a lot to, an arbitrary interpretation of what constitutes a noise. And that's something that maybe in the future the village should address, take another look at that, at the noise ordinance. What does it mean to control lighting, and how does a sponsor control lighting on public spaces? That's another question that I think is raised by this violation. How do you control refuse? I suggest you impose a condition in the permit for the removal of refuse, but I think that's as far as you can go. You can't control refuse. I mean, what does that mean? E, the use of one or more signs which are not authorized by the permit. This is another situation where you already have a sign ordinance, and this is in conflict with your sign ordinance, because in your sign ordinance you provide for exempt signs and permitted signs. Now, what do I think you're referring to when you talk about signs? I think you're talking about directional signs or possibly advertising an event. Well, that's already provided for in your sign ordinance, and there's nothing in this ordinance, the events code, which creates any standards, gives you any guidance as to what's a sign violation. So how can you have a violation for something that's not in the ordinance? And that's the big problem I have with many of these violations. There's no support for this in the draft, because it was never intended to have that many violations in the first place. So you already have exempt signs, which exempts directional signs, and you already have permitted signs, which again allows directional signs provided they're no larger than 2 square feet. And then finally, F, the failure to comply with any other requirement or restriction imposed by this chapter. There's no chapter reference in your proposed ordinance. And I don't know whether it's creating a new chapter or it's going to be included in another chapter. And if it's included in another chapter, then how do you know what you're referring to when you say violations imposed by any other chapter? So I think that part is vague. And with regard to noise, by the way, I'd also mention to you that you've got that in the zoning ordinance that you're proposing for the fairgrounds. You have a requirement for noise, and I think you're going to run into the same conflict that you have with the noise ordinance and what you're putting in your zoning ordinance. So those are my thoughts on this. And in closing, since we're getting very close to the finish line, I again would like to thank the committee members who worked very hard on this. We spent about a year working on this, and I think we did a very diligent and fairly good job. The subcommittees that we had were on business, Bob Babarot and Tony Ballasone. On the fairgrounds subcommittee, we had Deborah Ashman and Chris Chesney. On the not-for-profit, we had Joanne Clark and Jean Fleming. On the planning board, we had David Miller. On public safety, we had Henry Campbell and Peter Dunn. For residents, we had John Lahane and Debbie Duke. And the liaison to our committee was the former mayor, Jim Reardon, and Brant Nuneker. And I think, as I understand, Brant will be leaving his service as a trustee here. I would like to thank him for his extraordinary effort in regard to this events code. I think he in large measure, had a lot to do with, and I know we worked very hard on this, so thank you, Brant, for all of your efforts and service. I know
Thank
that
you.
our community will be better for that service, so thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Hi there. I believe the events code is still problematic. We still have a lot of the same problems that were brought up before. I'm sorry, I'm Joe Wheely. Still the problems we had before. It doesn't define what a routine activity is. It doesn't go into whether an activity that's routine in one parcel it can be considered non-routine in another. It goes on to define public places so broad that it would include churches and schools. I don't think that's the intent of this board, is to regulate activities at churches and schools. It keeps this long application process in place for permits, but then it's very vague on how the village would go about waiving it. If you don't make an application, how can the village consider a waiver? And in the code that's written here, it says that the village can waive the requirement for an application, even though how would you do that without an application? So the code is still full of problems. I appreciate if the board would continue to work on this and get to something that's more workable for people and not so arbitrary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Reardon, once again. When you look at the Rhinebeck Village Code, you could go through that thing page by page, and you can find vulgarities in that thing that would make your head spin. And this board has recognized over the years that we are in desperate need of a zoning code rewrite. The intention with this events code was to make sure that the village was aware of something that was going to happen. And we did not want to make this, excuse me, a formidable process for somebody bringing a small event into this community. So hence we put the 250 number in there. Pat's Knitting Club doesn't need to fill out that type of permit. You know, this is designed for large events that are going to draw people that are going to be there for a continual period of time. It's not meant to control a church bake sale where people are coming and going all day long. So the intent here was, if somebody's staging an event, and I'll use the half marathon, all right, as a prime example. It's a big event. There's probably well over 1,000 people between spectators and participants in that event. And that group's been great to work with. I mean, they're professionals. They stage the events all over the country. They knew exactly what to do. They called me up on the telephone and said, we want to propose this. What do we need to do? They worked with us, and they always have. We don't need an event permit for them, although this will require it. And it'll be a very, very easy application process, simply because we have established a track record with that group. They put their request into the village board. They pay for the police department. They make arrangements for sanitary cleanups. It was at the Fairgrounds, which made it a lot easier to stage this year. So it's big events like that, really, that we need to have a good idea what's going to happen, what the impacts are going to be. The Fairgrounds, I've said all along, those people are professional at running large-scale events. Sure, they're going to have to fill out a piece of paper at the beginning of the year. It's going to let us know what they're going to do for their schedule for the course of the year. But they've got a standard operations guideline up there that the village could use as an example of what we should be doing when it comes to controlling these types of things. When it comes to noise, you know, and I respect Steve Rosenberg tremendously, and, you know, value the work he does with Scenic Hudson. But again, there's, in my mind, this idea of having clear-cut definitions of what noise levels should be. This is a fairgrounds. There's going to be noise. When they have big events there, there's going to be noise. And the Fairgrounds has been here for well over 100 years. All right? Andy, correct me if I'm wrong. Last year, 36 days at the Fairgrounds where there were events going on, correct? So 36 out of 365 days of the year, there's an event going there. And of those 36 days, high impact is probably only about 7 days when you take in the fair and that what surrounds that. So most of the time, that's a bucolic situation up there where it doesn't have a dramatic impact on this community. Sure, certain times, there's busy weekends, the Sheep and Wool Festival, we have to deal with traffic. It's the price you pay when you live in Rhinebeck. I lived at 6536 Springbrook Avenue for 15 years. In case you don't know where that is, that's E.A. Kuhn Florist. There isn't anybody that was any closer to the fairgrounds than I was. You want to know what the recording was for the snake lady during the fair? I'll recite it to you word for word. But did I ever complain? No. When you own a piece of property in Rhinebeck and it's adjacent to the fairgrounds, or if you live in Rhinebeck, you accept the fact that the Dutchess County Fairgrounds is here, and you should be welcoming them for the benefit they bring to this community and the tax dollars that are generated there that comes back to us. So you could try and come up with a perfect law. The zoning code, yes, it needs to be rewritten. We're never going to come up with anything that's going to make everybody happy 100% of the time. But that's not our job. Our job is to make sure we work together and preserve the integrity of this community. And I think the steering code committee, John and the whole group did a fantastic job. I already said the zoning committee, they did a fantastic job. And we could sit here and we can talk till we're blue in the face, and one person can say, make this change, this person can say, make that change. My opinion, stop. Put this thing into work, get it in place, and if there's things that need to be addressed going forward, address them. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
That's just a good question. In the last events code, there was language about, just that, the village had the right to, request like, it wasn't an application fee, because I see that there's like talks maybe about that, but it was more of like, basically dollars to cover, I don't know, the village police or cleanup or, anything like that. Is that still in this, and where is that, if it is? And if it's not in there, then is that something that would be part of like the application process, or so that, it's
121.3D has got a provision for review fees if you deem it necessary.
121.3D.
Right.
Yep.
That's right. For review expenses.
Is that, yeah, I sort of took the review expenses as like application, like you have, when you get a building permit, the cost for the building permit is kind of supposed to cover like the building inspector's review. Okay. I'm okay. I'm just was surprised to see that that wasn't in there.
Thanks, Piper. Any other comments? Want to move to, you guys got any comments?
Well, not in public hearing, but
Okay. Do you want to make a motion to close it?
I make a motion to close public hearing.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing's closed. You want to talk about these? You want to move on to other business?
What do you, Rich, what do you think about John Ward's comments as far as violations?
Well, if you want to take another look at that, you could defer that to your next meeting. You close the public hearing. Maybe you want to discuss it further with John. It's the first time I've heard the comments tonight.
I'm okay the way it was before, and I'm okay with it the way it is now, so.
Your decision.
To get it done, personally. We could strike B and E and make it a condition.
That's fine, and that would not be a significant change, so you would be able to adopt it.
You just
tonight.
re-letter that paragraph.
That's up to the board.
That would be the failure to present a permit to an enforcement officer upon request of such officer, and E, the use of one or more signs which are not authorized by the permit. because it's covered in other areas anyway, under penalties and stuff like that.
What about when he says F imposed by this chapter? He said, what chapter does that refer to?
It says this chapter, so it's what he's referring to, is the events code chapter.
Okay.
It's not the entire zoning chapter.
Will this have a chapter number when it goes in? Is that, okay.
121.
Gotcha.
So I'd be okay with it.
Is that what the board wants to do? Strike those two provisions and re-letter it?
Yes. Well, me. Heinz,
I'm sorry?
is that okay with you?
Well, which one's the one, which one's the one?
B and-
He wants to strike B and E and re-letter.
Well, if we don't have B, how does the person looking to ensure that it's a permitted use, how do they?
That was,
What do they have to go on?
John's comments dealt with more, I think, additional issues as far as who's supposed to have the permit, whether it's supposed to be displayed, whether that needs to be covered in the local law.
But we could, that can be a condition for approval, to display your permit. I mean, that can be, if we chose to do that, which, I don't know why we would, but.
So we need a motion to move
Well,
on
if the
that?
board wants to make that change before it adopts it, we can, the board agrees with it. We'll make those changes and re-letter it, and that's not significant enough where you wouldn't have to, where you could not adopt it tonight.
So can I make a motion for the whole thing?
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the Fairgrounds zoning district as submitted and the,
Well, wait, before you go
oh, do we
that
have to do
far,
the seeker stuff?
do an amendment on this first, and then I've got resolutions prepared for the adoption of both the ordinances, if that's what the board wants to do.
Okay, so I would like to amend the events, proposed events code with the deletion of section 126, 121-6, B and E.
D or B?
B as in boy, and E, and to re-letter it appropriately.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay, then, as I said, if you are going to move forward and you want to adopt it, I have prepared resolutions, just because it was the first one that you considered tonight. You've got the Fairgrounds District resolution, which sets forth the fact that you've held a public hearing tonight, you've examined the seeker documents, there is no negative impacts which you found, so you're going to adopt a negative declaration, and then adopt the text of the ordinance, which is included here and has been on your desks for well over 3 weeks.
I make a motion that we
As written?
approve the resolution as written.
For the fairgrounds. For the fairgrounds, right?
This is the Fairgrounds,
That's
right?
fairgrounds, yeah.
And that includes the declaration,
Yes.
all in one, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just have to say that I have to recuse myself on the vote because my employer is Dutchess Beer, and they're a sponsor of the Dutchess County Fair. And I just want to say my sales commissions for the entire year of 2013 was $115.67. So it's not that I'm making thousands of dollars off the fair.
You should,
Yeah.
you should appeal that to the ethics board.
You're the ethics board.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Okay, then you've got the same, basically the same resolution prepared for the events code. Again, it recites the fact that the environmental assessment form has determined that you have not found any significant environmental impacts, adopting a negative declaration. This also was referred to Dutchess County Planning, and there's a notice of local concern on that.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve it as submitted.
With the exception of,
With the amendments that
We
you've
amend,
already
yeah, we
adopted.
amended
Yeah, it's already
that.
been. Is there a second? Any further discussion?
Yeah, I want to comment on this one. Here comes the rebel rouser in me, Jim. I do not believe the events code should be linked to the fairgrounds activities. The fairgrounds are regulated by the state, which kicks in with the mass gathering law, and the county health department. And now with the new fairgrounds zoning law, they're regulated. The fairgrounds is the second biggest tourist attraction in Dutchess County, second to the Roosevelt Library and Home. The fairgrounds and their events bring in tourists not only to Rhinebeck, but the entire northern Dutchess area and the Kingston area. And speaking of Kingston, at one time there was an IBM plant over there that employed 10,000 people. That economic engine is gone. Therefore, we should try to maintain the tourism factor that the fairgrounds enhances and the many jobs it supports directly or indirectly. The Rhinebeck Village is a vibrant downtown area that is supported by the many weekend activities at the fairgrounds. By linking the events code to the fairgrounds, it is possible that future village boards could prevent some or all of the activities at the fairgrounds. Therefore, I cannot support the events code in its present form. I do agree we need an events code, but I just don't think it should be linked to the fairgrounds because they already are regulated.
We got a motion and a second on the floor.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those against?
Aye. Nay.
So moved. Done.
That's it. The only thing I need from this board is the authorization to proceed with the defense of the,
Yeah, we got that's on the other business one. Do you have other business, Heinz, you want to start with?
I have one item here. We had a audit from the state controller's office, and we had the water department audited. As part of that audit was a recommendation that the board should annually audit. I'm sorry? Microphone doesn't work. This one works.
2 seconds,
it's on the website.
Yeah, there were paper copies.
Okay. Let me start again. About 6-7 months ago, we had an audit by the State Controller's Office of the Water Department. As part of that audit, we had gotten some recommendations to implement some changes to our way of doing business. And I'm going to explain that and about that in the next meeting in more detail. What I would like to have the board focus on right now is one item, and that has to do with a audit that the Controller's Office, a financial audit that the Controller Office recommended for the Treasurer's receipts, financial records, and so on. So I'd like to get permission to go out for bids for an auditor to audit particularly the cash receipts that we have, not just in the water department, but also in other areas like planning board, the court, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is not going to be too expensive. I talked to our friends across the street here. They're going to have an audit on their cash receipts, and I think they found somebody who did it for about $2,500, a local CPA. But I think we have to get back and tell the Controller's Office what it is that we want to do, and Rich is drafting a letter for that, but one of the things I need to do is to get approval from you guys that I can go out and
Well, you should probably
Get some
solicit and find out what the cost is going to be, and your budget cycle's coming up now, so.
yeah,
you
which
to-
we have to put it in the budget. Now, we're not going to do that audit before we finish with this year's time, by May or something like that, after that. But I'd like to get at least set up to be able to put it in the budget and to find out how much it's going to cost.
Yeah, get us the estimate and we'll go from there.
Well, I just want to make sure that.
Sounds good to me. Thanks for doing it.
Now, one of the other reasons is that we have, within a year and a half, we have 3 different treasurers. That's another reason to go out and do that, okay?
Okay.
That is all I have.
We have to, I'd like to make a motion to approve the expenditure of funds in defense of the Article 78 for Rich to handle for 47 West Market Street.
Make a second.
Any discussion?
What happened?
We had the decision by the Zoning Board of Appeals, which determined that the non-conforming use was exceeded at 47 Market Street. The property owner has filed an Article 78 challenging that, so I'm going to have to defend it. I need this board's authorization to do it.
Is it okay to talk about this openly, or did you really mind? Do you have experience with zoning litigation, or?
Yes.
Okay.
What do we talk?
So that's based on how many hours you assume that's going to take you to,
I'm going to estimate that you probably got a $2,500 to $3,000 bill coming forward to defend that.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You have the Article 78, you know,
We were served last Thursday.
I'd like to see it, just see how they're framing it.
The stack of papers.
I'd like to make another motion to establish the rate for the interim treasurer at $16 per hour, retroactive to, what was that date? The 10th? Monday the 10th, was it? Okay, Monday the 10th.
What's the rate now?
16.
16? And what we gonna do?
No, 16 is the rate that we're establishing.
What was it? 14, right? Was it?
12 and change.
I second it.
Any discussion?
Yeah, this is for 34, 38, 35 hours.
Yeah, it's full-time, 35 hours. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All the benefits of a full-time?
Not for an interim,
In
Holidays?
terms of holidays, yeah.
She always been a full-time employee?
No.
Well, she's full-time now, if you like, yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah, which we already passed that in February.
But she's not union, I mean, or
No.
doesn't get all those
She
union
falls
protections.
underneath of the full-time,
So it's medical and everything, that's right.
if she's full-time.
That's,
Okay. The only other thing I have here is something came on the urban boundary adjustment, which basically didn't affect us at all. It was addressed to both the town and the village, but it comes from the DOT, and it relates to eligibility for grants and such, but already the entire village is included in the small urban area boundary. The only difference was a little area south of the train station in Rhine Cliff was added out in the town. And it's all based on data that comes out of the 2010 census. So, don't need to make a motion to
Just make it more
execute
challenging for us to get grants and stuff, since we're not,
It hasn't changed from the boundary for the village. We've been included in it the whole time.
And it's a form to
Oh,
be signed
okay.
by you?
Yeah.
Board just authorized you to sign. It's not incurring any additional funds or
No.
expending money.
No, okay, I just want to make you aware. Anybody got anything else under other
We have
business?
those,
Thanks,
we have
John.
those bids to open up.
Oh, all right.
This is riveting.
This
What
is
is this?
riveting.
This is for the,
This
it's not
is
sludge related, is it?
the closed bids on the equipment that we put out for sale. Are they in order here, or they're all different? We'll start with the Dodge pickup. Okay. So,
Nobody interested in voting.
What's that?
Two big motors I want to get rid of.
Nobody wanted the motors. So, bid for $601 on the Dodge Ram 2500 pickup with the Fisher plow. Are those supposed to go together?
I'm not sure. What did the bid,
Sealed bids in writing.
but did it separate the plow from the truck?
No,
It's together.
2001 Dodge pickup, Fisher plow, cracked frame cab,
Okay.
5 bucks. Yeah,
Okay.
together.
Okay.
Okay. Have another one on the same pickup for $400.
So far, this guy's ahead.
That's right. Okay. We don't have to name names, do we? Rich?
Award the bid.
Not until the end. All right. $150 for the 2000 Dodge Durango.
I think that's the,
2002 Dodge Durango.
no, 2000.
That's not the truck, that's a different one.
That's the fire
Yeah, the
chiefs.
second chief's car.
2002.
Okay.
Well, he wrote 2000 on there, so.
Former fire chief's car, 2002 Dodge. How much was it?
We'll have to refer that to Rich in a minute.
How
Okay.
much was the bid?
How much is the bid? $150.
Okay. Good news, Heinz. One on the 1983 diesel generator.
Don't- not
That's
me.
mine,
That's his.
or that's
Good news,
wastewater.
man. $1,509.
Wow. Okay.
The 1990 International 4600 truck, 407. The 2001 Dodge 2500 pickup, 419. That's got to be, oh, I guess we got to put them all together, so.
How much for the recycling truck?
$407. Confetti in this one. Serious business. The old police car, $355.
What's the old police car?
What's that?
How much?
355. He upped it.
Yeah, see,
$5.
That's
Cross
what
it
somebody
out.
else was bidding against them.
That's right. And the last one here, I believe, is this is something different. It's a bid on the garage door repair.
I don't remember.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
something else.
That's it. Okay, we'll give that back to Pat. So,
So,
do we have to decide on awarding a bid now?
Well, I mean, if you're going to award them, it's
Okay.
It says recycling truck.
yeah, that's why we opened it up,
Oh.
but
Yeah.
something else is in there, though.
Let me see again. Check to make sure.
Yeah, that's how it's given to me.
It's been sabotaged.
Oh, he's exchanging,
Oh,
he's gonna do
okay.
work in exchange.
This is a barter proposal. I apologize for my misreading it the first time. So they want to trade a new garage door for the recycling truck. Want to review that one, Rich?
you have no way of determining value. You've got to bid.
Howie, that's your,
I think we should put that
You're
off.
the garage
We
door
should
guy.
table that one.
Well, that might be the best deal. All right. So
So,
the top for the,
well, the pickup one is easy here. We had 3 bids for the pickup truck. The Ram 2500 pickup, $601, $400, and
what's this one? 419.
$419. So the person who bid $601, George Wyatt, gets that truck.
We have to choose to accept the bid, correct? Or that's it?
Oh, do I make a motion to accept the bid?
Yeah.
Right? I make a motion to accept the bid of $601
second.
for the Dodge Ram 2500 pickup truck.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved, $601 to George Wyatt.
Now, we only got one bid on the International. This is the recycling truck.
Was it recycling or garbage?
Well, it says International 4600 truck, 1990,
That's recycling, okay.
yeah, for $407.
That's it?
Yeah, so I don't, we don't,
You don't have to accept the bid. I mean, if
Right.
you believe the vehicle is worth more than that.
right.
So-
I think we can get more than, I got $300, $350 for a car at scrap metal.
All right, so
So-
want to table that one? How about the,
I make a motion.
You just reject the bid.
I make a motion, we reject this bid.
we have to have a motion to
Second.
reject it?
Second. But
Further
let's
discussion?
scrap it, though. Let's not keep it, for instance.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're-
Do we need a motion to scrap it?
Well, you've already declared it surplus. You ought to find out what you can get for scrap on it.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the police car, we only had one bid on.
Okay,
I make a motion to accept the bid for $355 for the old police car from Jason Wyant.
Second.
any discussion?
Do you know how many miles are on that?
Is it saying? It's a lot.
According to this, the odometer's broken.
Okay. All those in favor?
That's about the scrap
Aye.
value. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Jason Wyant gets the old police car.
Now, there's
That's that.
this is the Dodge
Okay.
Durango.
We have one for 150 on the Dodge Durango.
Is this the same thing? What was this for?
There's a
That's the
generator.
trade stuff
Oh,
for
this
the
is
recycling
trade.
truck.
This is the recycling truck.
Yeah.
Oh,
May want to consider that one.
Well, we'll
I don't know,
we'll
where's
have
the
to look.
garage door that we need replaced?
I don't
It
know.
doesn't
Why
exist.
why don't you let me look at this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
We rejected the other bid. and-
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so we have a bid for $150 for the Dodge Durango, which is the police chief's car, the second police chief's,
Fine.
Yeah, fire.
fireman's car, fire chief's car, sorry.
I make a motion, we accept that.
Well,
Would we get more for scrap?
But who's gonna
Yeah,
spend the
right,
time
right.
taking it in and,
Scrap?
Well, maybe we can load it on the, tow it over behind our recycling truck.
I mean, the recycling truck might have some real scrap value, but.
The Durango, you probably get $400 or $500 out of it.
Really?
I got $350 out of the Subaru station.
yeah. So I make a motion, we reject this bid and look into the scrapping it.
Second.
Further discussion?
What happened to my motion? No, I'm kidding, I don't care. That's fine.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we're keeping.
Okay, now, yeah,
Okay,
this
there's
is
a couple
yours.
more on
The
that one.
generator,
The generator, that's yours.
1983 Solar diesel generator, the bid is $1,509. I make a motion that we accept this.
Second.
How much can we get that in scrap?
I don't know, it's basically
It's only-
just,
I'm only
it's
kidding.
like a tractor motor.
I know.
And that's about it.
I know.
It's- I don't know.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. We have a buyer for the
Who
generator.
was the award, who was the bid?
Chris Simonetti, Kieran Farm, Wappingers.
Any other business?
Not until tomorrow night, right? Are we gonna meet tomorrow night?
That's right. Be back there.
Why
With,
get the bids back?
Yeah.
The awarded one.
You want them all back?
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.